beginning of 2008, a member of the federal government was asked whether it was possible for a person to live on the age pension. So they were asked whether it was possible to live on the age pension. To their credit, without dodging the question, they answered no. However, when asked what would be done, they answered, "We'll see when our committee comes back in about 9 months' time." Apparently, people over the age of 65 are immune to starvation. At another time, the Victorian government decided to retire some of the train carriages from their rail service. It was decided to sell them to a collector who was going to use them in an exhibit. And while it seemed a brilliant idea at the time, a few months later it became apparent that the carriages were actually still needed just to keep up with the demand on the rail system. The government returned to the collector and asked to buy them back. He happily agreed, but not before negotiating to sell the cars for tens of thousands of dollars more than he had purchased them in the first place. And most of you will remember when Bob Hawke bravely announced, "No Australian child will live in poverty." At the end of his deadline, all that had been achieved was a new definition of poverty. This definition was carefully worded so that it was true no Australian child lives in poverty, even though under the old definition things were only slightly better than they were previously. These events remind us of the true nature of our government. Although we are blessed to have one of the finest governments in the world, it is still capable of making mistakes, like selling carriages that it still needs. It cannot provide true peace, as shown when dealing with pensioners who are desperate for financial security. And ultimately, as a human government, it is weak and cannot accomplish what it sets out to do, as Bob Hawke found out. As we come to our passage, we find the leaders of Israel are no different. Israel's government has ignored God, and worse, they have led God's people away from Him. They have failed, and with them the whole country has failed. Just as our government failed, and we fail along with it. What distinguishes us from Israel is, what distinguishes us from them is Israel's special relationship with God. A covenant that bound God to them and them to God. Centuries before, God had raised them up out of slavery to another master, Egypt, and made them a nation for Himself. He bound Himself to them under covenant, and as we read in Deuteronomy, Moses declared God's word to them, saying, "See, I am setting," from verse 2, "I am setting before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing if you obey the commands of the Lord your God that I am giving you today. The curse if you disobey the commands of the Lord your God and turn away from the way that I command you today by following other gods which you have not known." Israel was given an ultimatum. If you obey me, if you live with obedience, then you'll be blessed. If you disobey me, you will be cursed. The following centuries of Israel's history is a demonstration of their failure to obey the commands of the Lord. For a time they followed God, but always they would turn away and abandon the one who would save them. Here in Micha 5, Jerusalem, the centre of God's kingdom Judah, is under siege. God's people fail to serve Him once again, and God is now bringing His promised curse down upon them. He is bringing judgment on their rebellion, on their sin against Him. And what a judgment it is! The northern 10 tribes have just been defeated, and they will never be restored as the Assyrians carry them off and disperse them among the other nations which they have already conquered. So what of Judah? Well, in verse 1 we read, "Now muster yourselves in troops, daughter of troops. They have laid siege against us. With a rod they will smite the judge of Israel in the cheek." Here in Jerusalem, the city is being called to defend itself. But it is not being called by its right name. Instead, it is called daughter of troops. Such a name hints at just how natural warfare had become to this place. By itself, it tells us of God's judgment. God's own people live in the daughter of troops and have become accustomed to battle and warfare. How far this is from the blessing they were supposed to be enjoying. And And it would seem that Israel is powerless to do anything about it. In the midst of being called to arms, the very judge of Israel is being struck on the cheek. It is not a strong warrior who is struck on the cheek. Rather, it is someone who is unable to stop their opponent, a weak and pathetic creature who is at the mercy of his attackers. Yet this is the judge, the ruler of Israel, reduced to a piteous state of helplessness, devoid of any way to defend himself, let alone the nation for which he is responsible. Israel has got real problems. It has earned God's curse. And even those responsible for Israel's protection are helpless before him. Here, facing the judgment of God, God offers the answer. God himself offers the answer, so I want to emphasize that. A promise of resolution and peace. He turns his attention from the mighty Jerusalem, which has become the Lord of troops, and addresses little Bethlehem Ephrathah. Ephrathah is just an alternative name for Bethlehem, if you want. Verse 2 says, "But as for you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you one will go forth for me to be ruler in Israel." He's going forth from long ago, from the days of eternity. How does God plan to save his people from his fair judgment? God promises to send the people a ruler. But wasn't that the problem in the first place? Didn't the rulers of Judah stand unable to defend or protect the people rather let them into God's judgment? God promises a ruler, but a new kind of ruler. This ruler will go forth with God. This ruler comes from the days of eternity, from ancient days in the years. Being from eternity marks his difference. He is going to be something unlike anything before him. He is not only a new ruler, he is a new kind of ruler. What will this ruler be like? If you were sitting listening to Micha in besieged Jerusalem, you would already be thrilled, because here is a promise of change, of improvement. But just how much greater will he be? Will he really be able to defeat the enemies of God's people? Micha provides God's answers. He starts by letting us know that he will begin by giving his people up. That doesn't sound much better than the last one. But amazingly, the text tells us it is because of the God-centeredness of this ruler that he does this. It's the important word therefore. It says, therefore he will give them up. Why does he give them up? Because he is God's ruler, whose origin is from ancient times. Go back to the verse. It says, "But as for you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you one will go forth for me to be ruler in Israel. He is going forth from long ago, from the days of eternity. Therefore he will give them up." I'm emphasizing this because the difference, first and foremost, between this ruler and any other is his dedication to God. That he will go forth for God. He will not only give his people up, he will wait and bring them back at the appointed time, when the one who is in labour has given birth. In verse 3. The one who has in labour is a reference to the previous chapter, when the process of Judah's judgment and punishment is compared to a painful labour, painful childbirth. Therefore, it is the conclusion of Israel's trials that the rest of Israel shall be reunited under its new rule. Then he will arise and shepherd his flock in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. And so this will be the nature of the new ruler. He will be like a shepherd. He will tend his flock with care and affection. He will lead them to safe places. He will protect the flock from predators and those who would steal them away. He will rule over the flock, but it is a loving rule, a serving rule. He shepherds his flock. It is a wonderful thing to imagine. A ruler who cares for his people and loves his people and protects